There was some friction. My side chick was Polkadot for a while.
I was extremely stressed about these offline offenses when I started out.
We need to work together instead of getting too centralized.
The validator mafia, yes.
They need to hire security just to get there because it's kind of dangerous and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's
What about the actual incentives? Is it possible to make a living doing this?
The launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space monkeys blasting off with the validators of Polkadot, Tugy from Amfork, Paradox from Paranodes, and Lucky Friday, Kukabi from the IBP, and Helicon. And finally, we have Will, the master of validators, here with us to give us the full story of what's happening behind the scenes of Polkadot. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey.
Yeah, thanks very much for being here.
Yeah.
So you guys live a life that's a little different than a lot of the people who interact and use the network. What you do is make sure the network runs and makes high quality blocks.
Yeah.
What goes on in the mind of somebody when they're deciding to embark on this journey of being a validator for any blockchain network? What does it take?
Essentially, I started off by trying to complement my technical skills with staking, right, or securing the network, right? I did not exactly know what I was getting myself into from a lifestyle perspective.
Okay.
Right, so, I'm going to run this application, I'm going to be active on these days, I'm going to see blocks generating. This was before parachains came out. The journey from, I would say, perhaps a naive or maybe uninformed beginning to now. Now it's like 24/7 call, always monitoring things, always trying to make sure things are working properly, improving the time of reaction for things.
Yeah.
So it has been like a big lifestyle change. But initially it was purely to combine technical and just to do something beyond staking, to use what I know.
Okay, because you were already staking and you thought, well,
Yeah.
man, I could just cut out the middleman here and go.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
right to the
Something like
size.
that.
That's good.
Don't cut out the middleman, right? That's
Okay,
the job.
that's yeah. But if you don't have what you have, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How about you, Tugy?
Yeah, I mean, my background is IT infrastructure and infrastructure security. So when I got into crypto, the whole validator infrastructure thing was like a given.
Cool.
And I think to run validators, you have to be really detail-oriented and picky about stuff because a little mistake or misconfiguration can have huge consequences, and
Sure.
in the end, people trust you potentially millions of dollars worth of tokens. So you have to be picky and detail-oriented.
Okay.
For me, I study computer science and I'm coming from a software development background. So I found out about the 1KV program, 1000 Validators program, and I also wanted to get somehow involved with the network, and it was a great entry point for me to start running a validator under 1KV.
Yeah.
Because it guarantees you some active time, so you can produce blocks. And once you start doing that, that initial fun of being able to contribute to the network by producing blocks is amazing feeling. And then I started noticing spots for possible tooling. And then I started introducing my software development abilities to the picture, and after a while it just became full time. I wasn't expecting it, but I think we're going to talk about lifestyle changes.
Will, you're not running validators anymore.
I mean, I do here and there, just helping out with some things. But I mean, for me, just my background of stuff was just kind of doing a lot of software development stuff. I really like kind of just the whole product-y side of things. Just making things that people actually use and stuff. But I also really like just kind of the aspect of just ecosystem stuff and community of people and that kind of thing. And so it's just for me, it's just really fulfilling to be able to just kind of see a cool community of people such as yourselves to be able to just it's this infrastructure is so critical to all these things that a bunch of other developers are building and stuff, and so it's being able to just help support kind of this broader Web3 thing of just being able to actually run the cool things that people are building and stuff. To me, that's really cool.
And how did you go from there to becoming, with this title, Master of Validators?
So yeah, it's funny. I went through a bunch of different phases of working on things in crypto. It's the thing I was working on immediately before this was working at Binance, funnily enough, and so I was working on I was just doing kind of just quality things and some other stuff, and that just so happened to work on like staking features and talking to validators and stuff. And so that kind of like brought me down this rabbit hole of like, oh, staking is really cool. It's like kind of want to dig deeper into this. And so.
Fascinating. And do you think the rest of the validator community accepts you as their master?
I don't know. It's up to you guys, to be honest.
Yeah, before every time I send a DM, I'm like, hey boss, master of validators, right? You
Right.
know? And then the message. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
But decentralized from that point.
yeah.
Yeah, good.
Everything beyond that.
It's decentralized, good.
I'm the decentralized daddy.
All right, so let's talk about lifestyle changes. That was a really interesting point that came up. So before, full night sleeps, no worries on your mind. What's life like now?
Well, I guess it may be different for each of us, right? But I also came from a software development background.
Oh, yeah.
So infrastructure, I had a more managerial role at one point in time, right? So more oversight into building processes, building systems to support high availability, right? I have a Windows background, right? So this is now Linux background. So I had to ramp up, right? So I know what needed to be done. I just needed to figure out how to execute it. So there was a learning curve,
Yeah.
right? I think I shortened that curve pretty well. But in the earlies, during the implementation stage, there was always, okay, did I produce a block? Did I not produce a block? That will always be on my mind, and I will be glued to the computer.
Yeah.
Vacation time
Right.
with my wife, hey, let's get a coffee. Open laptop, check, okay, everything's looking good,
Oh, man, yeah,
and
sure.
she was frustrated. She's like, are you looking at that Polkadot thing again?
Babe, you don't understand.
Yeah, there was some friction. My
Sure.
outside, my side chick was Polkadot for a while, right? Right, so yeah, there was some frustration on that personal side of things. As time went by and more systems were implemented, I felt a little more comfortable that if there was an issue, I would be alerted, right?
Okay.
And I can probably be alerted right now, so let's hope that's not the case. And as things progressed a bit more, I hired staff. And that allowed me to not be the first person on call. So if there are any issues, guys will check it out, they will send a message, hey, we got this alert, everything is okay, or we took this affirmative action, or there's an escalation strategy. So with all those things in place, I can get some time for myself, but it wasn't an immediate thing. It took well over a year for
Gotcha.
me to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, and my wife is happier. We have gone on many vacations, and I still do check, but I keep it for the evenings, right? And I have an arrangement that if there is an issue that's escalated to me, that I can take it without being, there's a term we use, buff, but that's a Caribbean term, but you may know it as scolded.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
I
With your
want
wife, you have
scolded.
an agreement.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So
okay.
It's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when she's not around, it's one of my screens is dedicated to like Grafana and stuff like that.
Is
so
it?
I'm working here, and I turn left, and I can take a look at everything.
It's a pretty relatable experience. Or?
Yeah.
So you start out by monitoring 24/7, and over time it becomes management by exception, more like.
Yeah, it's
So you just
something-
respond to escalated issues, right?
In my case, yes, but I still do have the guys, every hour make sure and check your Grafana. You never know what can pop up. If the alerting's not working, you never know.
These systems that you guys implement, you're not all building them independently. You're sharing with each other, or is it a bit of a rate? Is it a bit of a competition as well?
I think part of it is shared, and part of it, it's different to everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
There's
A lot of stuff is also given by parity on the foundation. There's a Web3 Foundation repo. There's a monitoring tool, extension to monitor on-chain metrics, like is a validator producing blocks, are to get them finalized.
Yeah.
Did you set I'm online message in case you didn't generate a block that session? And there's also a great tool from TurboFlakes to monitor the missed blocks. So
I've always found that I think we are all members of the 1KV. That environment is very supportive,
Yeah.
right? So I would say my tooling is not like a copy paste, but it builds on things that I would ask in the channel, or someone generated a tool that I can say, hey, that's a good feature. I'm going to put that into my monitoring stack. And when I first started, I had like a million questions, right? And Will had like a million answers, right? And as time went by, I tried to give that back to the community. And we also have like nice tools like Sub VT, right? You know, mobile apps and Tugy is a good guy that you can always say, hey, what's that endpoint for monitoring this, that, and the other? And he's going to be like, it's that, you know. I don't feel like there's competition when it comes to knowledge, like, you know.
It's like we have a healthy competition, like we're all competing for a scarce amount of resources,
Yeah.
but still we're working together, and like we need to work together for it to make work instead of getting too centralized.
And regarding competition, I think we all have different edges that we specialize in. Even like software developers, we are developing software, but we do sort of like different things. So I think the competition, like you said, it's more like supporting each other in like fulfilling our, like realizing ourselves even.
Yeah.
I think. So you have to get better over time, of course. There's a pressure, but then it's not, you don't get stressed out or, yeah.
Actually, so maybe you guys can fill us in a bit, like what can actually go wrong here? Or do you have any stories about
So for me, it's interesting about kind of just like things being like on call, like that kind of stuff, because it's like, I'm sort of like on call for like the Polkadot network itself. It's kind of
my
like,
God.
I'm like kind of the person that like, if ever there's like things where it's like, oh, it's like block times are slower, it's kind of like things where it's like, oh, it's like checking the health of like the Polkadot network itself and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it's like whenever there's kind of like a big disastrous instance of stuff where it's like, oh, we shipped like a new release and there's like a bug here and stuff like that. It's kind of like I have to do a bunch of things of just like, you know, like herding cats, like trying to get a bunch of people to, you know, one, like diagnose like what actually is here, like what went wrong, stuff like that. Trying to figure out where it's like, okay, does this last release, does this have that problem, that kind of stuff. And so I was like working with like core developers, but then working also with like the community to find out a bunch of things like that. And so I remember there's this like one time in particular, it was like, I think for like Polkadot, it was something along the lines of it's like so there's this like fragment election thing that determines like who going to be the next validator set. And so at one point, I think like the computation for this was like too much or something like that. And so it just kind of like stalled things for like a little bit. There was this like 1 or 2 hour window where it's like if people didn't do something, like they would get slashed. And so I was at like a friend's just like rooftop like party thing. And so I'm just like in the corner, just like frantically messaging people, just like, hey, it's like you guys need to like roll back a version and stuff like that. Literally just like messaging like a million people about stuff, trying to figure things out and that kind of thing. And so yeah, it's pretty interesting just to be able to, you know, one, just like learn from like all the, okay, like what went wrong and stuff like that. But also just two, you know, it's kind of like try and fix things on like a network-wide kind of status. And so
Sure.
That's fun.
That is
Yeah,
crazy.
I think over time you get, you find out that you can rely on the network as well. So an offline offense is when the validator is offline for a time period, let's say, to simplify it. And then I would be extremely like stressed out about being offline. But over time, you kind of notice that like this is the power of decentralization. You can be offline for a bit, and it doesn't hurt anyone, because like if it's only you and say a few more validators, then it's fine because the other validators have your back.
Yeah, less than 10%.
But you should still be prepared for the case where more than 10% is offline. It happened. Usually it's caused by a bug, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying, like I'm not as I was extremely stressed about these like offline offenses when I started out.
Yeah.
Now I know that like I'm covered if it's just me and a few more guys. But of course it doesn't mean like you still have the security measures and everything in place.
Sure.
But
I like that point because I suppose that there would be some would-be validators looking at this episode, right? One of the things that many people are concerned about, and I agree that with Tugy that, you know, high availability, we should try to keep it down, right? But there are instances where, let's say that does not happen. You don't get slashed if you're one validator and you're offline, right? That it has to be a percentage of the network, and that's 10%. Right, so
okay.
it's you plus you amongst 10%.
Interesting,
And
okay, I
then
didn't know.
the slash also has a gradient, right?
The more who are off, the more slash.
Yes, up to a cap. So
Okay.
there's a curve to that as well. Not only in governance we have curves otherwhere.
Curves everywhere, yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a fair point. The idea is that we don't want to be offline, but it's a decentralized network that allows a tolerance.
Yeah.
Okay,
A
okay.
tolerance.
Yeah, I think I've seen this especially with a lot of people, just like new people joining the space where they're just kind of like beginners, they want to like run a validator, stuff like that. It's actually kind of like, there's a lot of like room to mess up and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so especially like, that's why it's kind of like good for people to start on Kusama. And so it's kind of like, yeah, it's like a lot of room just to kind of like play around, see kind of like, okay, does this like monitoring stack work well? It's like people that aren't even maybe super familiar with like Linux or just like servers and that kind of thing. I would say it's like actually fairly accessible to be able to like start doing things, be able to like do it well, maintain good like uptime and stuff like that. Like you can kind of like learn as you go is what I mean. Like it's,
Gotcha.
What a lot of new people also ignore is like the monitoring part. It's like one of the most important, like
Most important.
monitoring. It's like monitor the host itself, monitor the application, the process, like in this case the validator, and then do also on-chain monitoring. Are your blocks getting finalized? Do you have a missed amount of blocks? Do you call disputes and that stuff? Like if you have that in place and the proper alerting pipeline, you can prevent so much stuff or be ahead of things.
I do see two things being very valuable. One, you need to know that there's an issue, and that's where alerting could come in. But you also need experience to know what to do in the event. So something happened, how do I fix it?
Sure.
Right? That comes with time, or it can be some previous experience with blockchain itself. This is something, it could be specific. It could be something that's, you know, like a regular sysops thing. Oh, the machine's offline. I need to, change RAM, or the disk is bad. I need to change the RAID array or something. But it could also be something specific to blockchain. So you need to build that experience. If you don't know, you need to know who can I ask to help me out, right? And we have avenues for that. I think the ecosystem does an excellent job in terms of helping people diagnose problems and stuff like that.
But
Right.
people also need to think about those potential problems or like prepare before it happens. Like always have a plan B and don't trust it because shit will go south, and like you need to know what to do when that happens. Like you can prepare out of automation scripts or Terraform plans for it. Like, okay, just simple stuff like what do I do if the hardware fails? Oh, I'm just gonna provision a VM somewhere at a cloud provider or for failover, or I need to quickly downgrade, like have the Ansible playbooks ready where you just change a variable and then you can quickly downgrade multiple validators at once. And
Right, in the Web 2 world, we'll do things like disaster recovery plans, and we would have playbooks, not necessarily like Ansible playbooks for those tech guys, but you know, this is what you can do if this happens. Okay, so that didn't work. What's the next step? Yeah, so that documentation, and I've found that sometimes even though you have the documentation, you need to keep it up to date sometimes, and you need to run it through, do some tests.
But it's like those things are helpful, especially when it's kind of like, oh, it's like 3 a.m. and I get woken up by my phone, and it's kind of like you're like sleepy, you're tired, it's like your brain isn't actually kind of like working and stuff like that. So it's useful just to have this thing where it's just kind of like, okay, I have seen this problem before. This is kind of like some of the steps to kind of to do it, to just fix things and stuff like that. You don't have to actually spend your last 2 brain cells thinking of like, oh, how do I fix this kind of thing.
I was just thinking when you guys were speaking earlier, like, what if you're like drunk or something,
Yeah,
or like
same thing.
in a marital dispute, or like I don't know. It's like,
good rule of thumb, in my opinion, from infrastructure side is like spend 20% of your week documenting stuff. Like as he said, step by step, like even for you, so that when you wake up at 3 in the morning, you're a bit irritated, you can go check the guide, like even you might do a mistake, even you know it, right? So like document it in a way that everyone could follow the guide.
this is serious stuff. We have kind of a unique system in this ecosystem. It's the 1KV, the 1000 Validators program. This is sort of an on-ramp, right?
It is.
Where people can get to know you guys, get to know who to reach out to, get to know some of the documentation. What does this look like for somebody who just wants to start validating in the ecosystem? How do they join the program, and what's the course of that program look like?
So this was something that started towards the end of like 2019. I was just thinking like a bunch of matrix chats. Like Gav just tags me. He was like, "Hey, like we should do this thing and stuff." And firstly, I think it was called like like Kusama Bootstrap program or something. And then he was like, "Oh no, it should be like more ambitious. It should be like the $1,000 program or something." I was like, "Okay, cool."
Okay.
So he kind of just like outlined just some things, which is kind of like, okay, here's like a few kind of like rules for people should follow to just kind of like be a part of this. What they were kind of like initially was some things, but it's just kind of like evolved over time, just as kind of like more people have joined and as kind of like the networks have changed and stuff. But essentially kind of what this is just kind of like a sort of like a structured program for people to be able to get started, just to be able to join the ecosystem. So it's both like Parity and Web3. They have a bunch of like KSM and DOT that is going towards like nominating people. And so if like people are just kind of like starting out, like usually kind of the biggest barrier of entry is that like, oh, I don't have like a lot of DOT or I don't have like a lot of KSM. Or it's kind of like, okay, how do I actually convince people to nominate me so that I can get into the validator set? And so this is kind of like a way that's kind of like people could start out just kind of like from zero, from scratch, and be able to start to get into the validator set, to be able to like go from there to start to get more like nominations from there to start to build out kind of like their brand, their reputation, their like entity, that kind of thing. And so as kind of this is like grown, it's kind of like this automated system where it's kind of like every 24 hours, a bunch of these funds will nominate people kind of based on kind of like a score. So people kind of get quantified of like their validator of sorts. And the way I'm kind of thinking about this is at the moment, just kind of like what factors are like good for the network of things, where it's just kind of like, okay, what do we actually want to see out of people actually like running infrastructure of stuff, where it's kind of like, okay, how like decentralized is it? It's like, are they actually kind of like active in stuff? It's like a big factor that I kind of think about is like, do they participate in like governance of things? Do they kind of like participate in other things? Do they have things kind of like set up in good ways and that kind of thing? And so ideally for me, it's just kind of like a way that's kind of like people can use this like a starting point to get into the ecosystem and then kind of go from there to maybe they want to like run more validators, maybe they want to kind of get into development things of stuff. It's like they can use this to like start to build out their kind of like brand and identity of the ecosystem kind of like from there.
1KV is why I'm here, basically. You can see even three of us are different. We have different ages, like I said.
Totally.
But it's almost like a school. You go in there with the community, so you learn about these things. The information is shared freely. Will is always very helpful and responsive. I'm not even sure how patient, how we can remain so patient with like now it's like 600 candidates.
Yeah, maybe.
No
more
kidding.
something.
Yeah, it's 667 last time I checked.
But you guys aren't still in the program, right? Like you graduate?
No,
Or you are still?
we're still in the program.
Okay.
We're still in the program. You know.
Okay.
We're the oldest students.
The program is great to get bootstrap, gives you an opportunity to get into active set.
Yeah.
And then when you take that opportunity and you can get independent rather easy instead other way, like with the program you can prove that you can do it and show on-chain metrics and prove it, right? So
And you do keep the rewards. And,
There's a threshold. 15% on Kusama and 5% on Polkadot.
That's how much you keep, or?
No, that's your max commission.
Oh yeah, I understand.
And
Okay.
you keep the commission. You
Yeah,
do.
gotcha. Yeah.
There's a reward aspect and a core infrastructure aspect to the program. But I believe that there's an equally social aspect to things as well. There are many friendships that I have made through the 1KV program. And I think Will does a very good job of steering towards needs of the network, right? And outside of like the core, well, there's that Hetzner issue, right? You know, we don't want too many validators on Hetzner, which has demonstrated an adverse behavior towards blockchains, right?
to be fair, they had it in their policy.
They always did, but you know,
They still do.
they still do, yeah, right? But they took action, which
Yeah.
I think, you know, brought to light the issue, right? So, you know, Will has put certain disincentives to validators in the program hosting on such a provider.
And I think we have come down.
Yeah. We have. There has been a drop. But also, I think one of the more prominent things that we would see in the ecosystem, a lot of validators participating in governance.
Yeah.
Right? You do get an incentive for participating in governance.
The validator mafia.
The validator mafia. Yes, we've heard. Finger, right? Yeah.
How often do you guys meet and scheme
No,
together?
we
Meet every Thursday.
yeah, okay.
Great.
Who are we going to vote Nate for next? All right. Do you want to go first? Right. Yeah, but you would find that a lot of validators are participating in governance.
Right.
And I think prior to the incentive, because there were less like about a handful of validators, right? Or I would say generally handful of participants on governance.
Yeah.
That's one, and then governance 2.0, right? OpenGov. So I actually saw that difference, that increase actually started in Open Governance 1.0. There was a sharp increase in participation, and that moved across to OpenGov.
Yeah.
And the OpenGov is supported by participation. So yeah, it worked well.
Very, very cool. So let's talk about that decentralization piece a little bit more here, because most of these validators, you're renting out server space on some sort of centralized server. You're working with Lucky Friday on some bare metal stuff,
Yes,
right? Which
yeah.
means you own the hardware.
So Lucky Friday operates out of multiple data centers in the US, and yeah, I have rack space that I bought my own servers, like physically procured.
Cool.
And there's a guy in the US that will put them in, and he puts all the cables in and everything. Beautiful job. These are the kind of things like we show off. Hey, did you see my server? And look how neat my cables
How
are.
big my rack is.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, so we host on self-owned bare metal, and if there's the opportunity to offer such to other individuals, Lucky Friday is like, almost like very generous in that aspect. So if someone says, hey, I like this idea, but I need some help doing it. Yeah, be it knowledge or be it actual implementation, Lucky Friday is willing to help out. So
Part of the fun is having your own servers and running them and upgrading them over time. And
Cool. It's like working on a car, eh?
yeah,
It is,
sort of
it
like
is,
that.
yeah.
And then, yes, over time you'll have to retire machines and get new ones, and you learn about server hardware. And I think we had to move from SSDs to NVMe's, like with the introduction of parachains. So you have to be on top of what's happening regarding hardware requirements as well. So it's all part of the fun, and I think it's great fun to have your own hardware. I would encourage anyone starting out.
What's the limitation for a desktop server?
Desktop server, I think you could do it, but you need like extremely good connection.
Yeah, the
preferably
internet bandwidth
like
thing is like the
yeah.
biggest thing. So it's
Yeah,
like if
that's
people are
okay.
running things in their home and stuff, it's kind of like they ideally need like a good connection that's like redundant, because it's like it's
Right.
like Comcast goes out or something, you're just like fuck,
Yeah,
It'll be
yeah.
like, what's this? It's like more than 200 megabits per second now.
something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So you don't usually get that at home. So
Consumer grade CPUs, the new ones, are quite like single core performance, really good. But then if you use that, make sure that you have ECC memory.
Yep.
Otherwise, you run a chance of getting the
Sorry.
DB corrupted of the validator or the node, and just like and the NVMe's also. I've got the types, but they also have certain fault protections inside some of them. They're a bit more costly, but like certain things have to be proper quality to run a validator on.
yeah.
I mean, some people have been running things like in their like home or more
Yeah.
kind of like, cause like Bruno, for example, from Remark, he's been just running kind of nodes like in their office for forever, just because like he cares a lot about centralization and stuff like that.
I do believe that desktops are doing pretty well in terms of single core compute, and it was something that wasn't popular before, but ECC memory is available. But there are a few other things, like there's a lot of high availability with the server chassis itself, right? Dual power supplies, ensuring that you have 2 NVMe slots for your storage so you can RAID, right? That's like a redundant hard drive thing.
Okay.
And there's also a module to control your computer even if it's off, called IPMI, right?
That's one of the most important
Oh,
things.
you need it. So you remember, you can be at a party with your wife on vacation, or just chilling with the bros, right? And something can happen, and you need to get in and fix it.
Right.
Right. Oh, my mom turned off my computer, so sorry, Polkadot. Right? So you need to react, and these server chassis, that's the housing,
Yeah.
has a lot of these functionality. It's built for purpose. I think that's how I can, say it.
Love to see that kind of thing. It's like if people are able to do that and have it's like good internet and that kind of thing. It's like love to see that. But also like another factor of like the 1KV stuff is that it's part of this kind of like quantifiable kind of stuff, sort of. People's kind of nodes get kind of tracked in terms of like what provider are they on, but also where is like the location, stuff like that. And so it's like if too many people are in the same data center, if they're in kind of like the same region or something like that, they get like a lower score for that. Or if they're kind of like in a more unique place, they get like a higher score for that.
Sure.
And so that's just to encourage more people to be able to not pick the same just like OVH thing in like Germany that literally like everybody else is in that kind of
Gotcha.
thing.
What are some places on the globe that are maybe in need of some more service?
South America, like Africa, places in Asia and stuff.
Ah, interesting.
It's interesting. Also, there's that kind of like this infrastructure builders program thing that is kind of happening as well, which is this was something that Tom from Stake Plus, he also kind of started. But the idea there is more so to be able to have kind of like a structured way of providing infrastructure that's not necessarily like validators, but more things kind of like RPC nodes or just other kind of infrastructure services, but be able to have people like own their own hardware in a bunch of these places, but have it be like fairly like geo-redundant in a bunch of places that are like underserved. And so, for example, like the Dweller folks, they have a bunch of things in like Africa and like Tunisia and stuff like that. And they're telling this story this one time of just like how they were setting this up, and it's you know it's kind of like you have to like go to these data centers or things like from the airport. So like they get there and there's like no screwdriver. They have to like venture out other places because there's no things there.
And did they say they needed like bodyguards as well?
Yeah, they needed to like hire like security just to get there because it's kind of like dangerous and stuff like that. And so it's like the like some people go through for this stuff. Is,
right. What about the actual rewards from making these blocks? What about the actual incentives? Is it possible to make a living doing this, or is it always going to be a hobby? And if so, how?
May I start this? I mean,
Yeah,
you have a lot to say about this.
Oh,
but-
me, come on, you go ahead, my friend.
For me, it's never been about the rewards, but for me, it's more about didn't expect any income at the beginning, but then I learned about the treasury support that you can get from Kusama and Polkadot treasuries, and then Web3 Foundation grants as well. So the way I support myself is more through grants. So I basically support my development through Web3 Foundation grants and treasury grants.
Is building the software that you were speaking about before?
Yeah, it's SubVT, two bots for Polkadot and Telegram, and then I developed an app as well. It's for iOS, and Android is coming as well.
It's a really beautiful app. Everyone get it?
Thanks. So those were supported by both Web3 Foundation and Kusama treasuries. And then I'm developing other software. So for me, it's more like I'm supporting myself through both validator income and software development.
Interesting. But it's your experience with the validators where you know what people need.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what to build, right?
Yeah. That's like, you are the user yourself. It's the most ideal situation for software development.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sure. And this is your full-time job?
Yeah, I'm doing it 24/7 now.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What about you two? What's your opinion on the matter?
We had a lot of discussions about this. We come from a more free market perspective. Like we personally were, we as M-Fork are strongly against like a minimum commission. Like let the market decide, people running validators, because if the chain itself plays a central bank, interferes with things, it's like leaves room for people to extract as much value as possible, and like it forces people to be as efficient as possible. And then if someone is racing to the bottom thing, it's like basically it was a self-inflicted problem by everyone because everyone wanted to undercut each other. But as part of the game, like increase the reward again, and then you have to, like for example, on Polkadot, we might be a little bit more expensive than others, but like we show them on-chain metrics. Look here, this is why you should stake with us. It doesn't make a difference. You still will earn more rewards, and this is how we handle on-chains. Like be profitable, and then tell people why the commission is not the only thing to look for when you select a validator.
Yeah, sure, right. Paradox, you were advocating for a minimum commission.
Yeah.
So what was that about?
My perspective is different. Well, we have spoken about this multiple times, right? And yet we are still here. So
One friend, it's like a healthy discussion.
Yeah. So my position is to be unstoppable. You also need to be sustainable. If you're running at a loss, you're going to eventually drop out, and the independents are the ones who may not have that financial means to continue. But the big guys, they enjoy economy of scale, right? So they may have one team that operates not only on Kusama, but Polkadot and a whole bunch of other chains, maybe other ecosystems as well. So I'm always an advocate for everybody should have an opportunity to stay reasonably profitable.
But we had that, like at that time the commission was at 3%. It's more than 60% of the people running at the minimum with a loss were 1KV member, and they had the option through the 1KV to run the validators with 15% commission. Don't have effects.
10.
Like what happened now, my opinion is like it's as every time there's a bailout by the government, the ones actually profit from it are the big guys. Like now the big guys earn definitely way more money, and
Yeah, well, I would push back on that. I'm using young people terms. I have seen since the minimum commission has been implemented that there are a lot more independent validators in the set. It has broken up, right? And that's based on-chain. That's data, right? And those who are receiving funding, right, they can continue receiving funding and not running at a loss. Because right now with the market conditions,
Yeah.
3% would have been like 0%, right? It would have been so negligible in terms of rewards. So at least validators now have a little something that they can hold on to keep the lights on.
Interesting.
Yeah, but with that, I don't think a minimum commission should be enriching, right? It shouldn't be that you at that point where you're making this loads above what you are expending. Yeah, so.
Yeah, honestly, I can see both sides of the debate here, which is, I suppose, why it was so interesting. Will, what have you seen since the minimum commission came in?
I mean, I think in general, I mean, maybe just taking like a step back and like viewing this from maybe like more like outside perspective. Like a lot of people, I think, like view this thing of like, oh, it's like validators, they're literally just like printing money and stuff like that. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, they must be like super rich and stuff like that. It's kind of like, that's not really the case for most people. It's kind of like for running validators and stuff like that, staking, unless they have like a shit ton of their own DOT or KSM and stuff like that, it's kind of like not, it's not like insanely profitable, if profitable at all, sort of.
Okay.
And so it's like a lot of people are running with like pretty small-ish margins of things. And so for me, it's like, I would love to see just kind of like a way where it's kind of like people could be like self-sustainable and be able to just at least kind of like have the cost of their infrastructure like covered in some way. And so that could either be through minimum commission or just like other, say like rebates or something like that, where it's just maybe there's kind of like treasury funds or otherwise that kind of just goes to just at least cover the cost of infrastructure so that people aren't running at a loss of some way.
Interesting.
The whole like minimum commission thing, I don't really have strong opinions on it either way, to be honest. I think it like over time, at least for like the 1KV stuff, have been just like increasing the maximum amount that people can set just to be able to allow people to have the option for things. So it's like if they don't care as much about trying to like attract other nominators and stuff, if they just want to be kind of like dependent on solely just like parity Web3 nominations and stuff, like they could set the maximum and that might work out well for them and stuff. But I think just being able to have people have like the option to choose things, that's nice. But in general, I think just having a self-sustainable ecosystem like that kind of value, I think that's pretty important.
Right, right.
It's kind of catering for the bear market conditions as well, right? This whole thing.
Yeah. Now, something I just want to, I do value what that Tugy said. When you select a validator, so the whole NPOS thing, the reward aspect of it is somewhat secondary. Your primary objective is to secure the network, right? So you're going to choose validators that you believe will secure the network in the best manner.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you're really doing. You're securing the network. The rewards come as a, an incentive to do that, right? And one of the things that you need to look at, it's not, you should not be too centered on the rewards, because a commission, unless it's like a gross, like from 0 to 20, it's not going to be adversely affecting your APY, right? But if that actor is offline, or if that actor gets slashed, then you may see a bigger effect. So your focus should be on, it's just a suggestion, ensuring that the validators you select can secure the network in the best possible manner, and everything else kind of falls in place.
Well, something I've noticed, especially in the last year or so, a lot of validators really developing their personal brand.
Yeah.
Also, some going and doing kind of community outreach. What do you guys think about that and that pressure to market yourselves?
I think a lot of the things that I've seen, at least kind of, was looking at other ecosystems initially where it's like, okay, say like Cosmos or other chains where it's kind of like, in those ecosystems especially, it's kind of like because a lot of your rewards are directly proportional to how many people like delegate to you, you need to be able to kind of like build out your brand and reputation like a lot more. And so kind of like going into things, it's like when Kusama launched and when like Polkadot launched and that kind of thing, I think it was like what we were sort of expecting people was to do kind of similar things of, okay, I'm going to build out this brand, this reputation. But a lot of people that kind of joined in, especially early on, were a lot more just like individuals. It was like maybe like devs, maybe tinkerers, like hobbyists. Over time, we've seen this kind of like more at least, but I remember just like writing this guide on the Polkadot wiki of just like, oh, it's like how to attract nominations or something like this. And it was kind of just talking about, it's like, yeah, you need to kind of like build out your brand, your identity, because it's like ideally people that nominate you, it's like ideally they're trusting you with kind of like the network, and they don't want to say, probably nominate just some random anonymous address that you don't know if you don't know how to trust them. If it's like, okay, are they going to be offline? Like, are they going to give me rewards? That sort of stuff. And so I like to see this more as kind of like people have kind of like grown. And it's like now, especially with a lot more of the governance stuff, to be able to now have kind of like almost kind of like a reputation of like, okay, here's kind of like maybe the other ways that I contribute to the network of via like their voice, their like political opinion in some way.
Yeah.
Or just by building out other cool products and services like sub-VT things or a lot of just the other awesome services that people are providing.
From day one, I thought like if I build useful software, if I help the community solve their issues, and if I can make my way from the validator tooling to actually like end user software products, then that's going to support my validator business as well.
Yeah.
So for me, they're always like hand in hand, like Will said. For me, it's always like build good software and solve real issues, and then the validator business is going to grow as a almost like I wouldn't want to say side product, but hand in hand.
Yeah.
For me, it's like that.
On my side, I just love the tech so much that I'm tweeting, I'm helping out people. So I'm just all over the place, right? And I think that somewhat helped the brand, right? So I just put like Paradox and I put a pipe, right? And then I put paranodes.io. So people kind of associate anytime they see me, they associate with the brand. It wasn't done intentionally. It was just done like, okay, that this happened like months or maybe a year after I said, okay, maybe this might be a good idea. So people know.
Remember your first videos, right?
Oh yes,
Yeah,
I
the
did
early videos,
videos.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Right?
Yeah. A lot of people, a lot of validators onboarding used it. I actually also contributed significantly to the wiki, and yeah, I'm a Twitter guy. Twitter.
Huge community work.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and my views on governance are not always popular, but I own it.
Right.
I own it.
Neither are mine.
No, neither yours, yeah.
I guess on our end, like company-wise, since we focus on the infrastructure part, we like do more professional, like the marketing more focus on more like what makes us different and why people should trust us with the staking. Like we leverage that part and do also demo cases with people, show them like how fast we can react and that kind of thing. On my personal Twitter, it's just having fun and shit posting, and
Yeah.
It's been very good lately. I mean, you've kind of taken over my timeline, actually. It's been quite nice. Yeah. Do you mostly go after people with looking to stake larger amounts?
both. I mean, of course, the public one, they will also do like private setup, so like we talk to both sides.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I think just to wrap it up, it'd be nice to know, because you guys can use these skills, you can deploy them to any blockchain network in the world, maybe, or could learn to at least.
Yes.
What keeps you guys focusing so much on this ecosystem? And if you have any experience in other ecosystems, how does it compare?
If I start, like I did the other way around. In my previous job, I was doing infrastructure and security for a crypto broker, and I was was responsible for multiple blockchains there.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why we, when co-founded M4, we decided to focus only on Polkadot ecosystem. For us, it was like, instead of being good at everything, we want to be the best at something. And Polkadot was doing everything right from the beginning with like runtime upgrades and like the legal aspects that has been worked on, and other chains. Like there are good other ones. Like for example, Tesla was one of the first. I think was the first one for proof of stake. Like they were good in the beginning, but somewhere along the way something went wrong. I don't know what happened. Used to be a big fan.
Cool.
Yeah.
How about you?
I started on Polkadot actually,
Yeah,
right? And through Lucky Friday has a wide span: Cosmos, Ethereum, Solana at one point. You know, so it just goes on. And when I interact with some of these, I'm like, why don't they do it like Polkadot, right? Now, Ethereum is pretty easy to set up, right, and maintain and all of those sort of things. But you need to have that minimum, right, if you want to do native, right? It could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing, right? Good thing is that once you meet that requirement, you're in, right? NPOS makes things a little difficult because you don't exactly know how much nominations you need to get into the active set, right? But that system allows for fair opportunity to get in. You don't need your own KSM to get into the active set. So you can get a lot of people to put up and help you and support you. And I think that's good.
Yeah. Also, like on that part, like many people don't appreciate it much, but like being able to run non-custodial staking saves so much problems. Like you don't need to be licensed, or you don't need to be like. If you have to do it custodial for someone, like most countries, you need a certain kind of license to do that. So basically, only big operators are capable of doing that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Before I was introduced to Polkadot and Kusama, I started running an ETH2, now ETH validator. So I've been doing that, but once I got to know more about Kusama and Polkadot, it just grew up on me, and I think leadership is very important as well. So we all look up to Gavin, I think, as developers, and he's the guy who developed the first Ethereum release as well. I think Will sets a great example as well. So and the community as well, it just feels just right for me as a developer. I just feel like I belong to this community, and that feeling is not there for me for Ethereum. At the beginning, I did compare these, and I was about to make a choice. Should I like devote more time on Ethereum or Polkadot? And it just felt more developer focused, more community focused, and just felt better.
Echo the sentiment 100 times.
It's beautifully put, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't want to discount, there are other people building good things, and, they are maybe taking some from Polkadot. Maybe Polkadot could benefit from their research as well. So I think keeping an open mind in general is a good thing, and keep it open source, and we can all rise with the tide.
Yeah, right. Will, you proud of these guys?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's like I also have my hands in kind of like a bunch of other kind of like networks and just other infrastructure things here and there. But I don't know. For me, Polkadot though, it's like a lot of the tech kind of keeps me coming back. Like a lot of there's all these cool new features that are just like continuously launching, almost at a pace that's like too fast to be honest. But yeah, like the community also keeps me coming back. It's just like so awesome to see a lot of beautiful individuals such as yourselves. It's pretty fulfilling. So.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you all for taking the time to be on the show today and giving us a little peek behind the curtain here.
Thanks,
Really grateful for all the work you do and for keeping these blocks unstoppable. We really owe you everything, so thank you.
Thanks, Jake.